The undefined terms in geometry. So there are three undefined terms in geometry, but before I go over those three terms, I want to take a look at the word undefined. So having no definition really. So one thing we could think about is the color red. If I were to tell you, give me a definition for the color red, it'd be tough to do. In order to understand what the color red looks like, you have to actually see it, right? In order to know what red is, you have to be able to see it. So, if you try to define the color red, you can't really do it until you actually see it. So undefined terms of geometry is the same idea, where you can't really define it without trying to, describe it using similar words. So for instance, the first one is point. So the first undefined term in geometry is a point, and we represent it with a dot. Right? What is a point? Well, a point is a dot. What's a dot? It's a point. So you can see how you can't really define it. You have to just see it, and that's it. So here's our point. And in theory, in geometry, well, we like to think of a point. We don't want it to have actual size to it. So there's really no size to it. You can't measure it. It has no thickness, nothing. It's just a location. So if I were to mark a point like this, we have to interpret it that it really is no size. It's just we want you to see that. We want you to point it out here. We want you to look in this direction here. And in geometry, we like to label things. So point A, point B. So if I were to tell you, look at point B, well, I know I want you to look here. If I said look at point A, then I know I want you to look here. So that's how we use points in geometry. So you have to just remember that. There's really no size to it. So in theory, it doesn't matter how big the point is, how small it is. We like to think of them all as having really no size to it. It's just a location in space. The second undefined term is a line. And a line, it looks like this. And we draw arrows on the ends. And a line extends forever in this direction, and it extends forever in this direction. So it goes forever in two directions. It never ends. And that's what these arrows tell us, that this line never ends. It keeps going and going and going. And the same thing on this side. It keeps going in this direction forever as well. But you can see that if we try to draw a line that goes forever, we can't do that because we would run out of paper. So we use the arrows to remind us that it keeps extending forever in either direction. And just like how we said the point has no size to it, there's no thickness, you can't really measure it. Same thing with the line. In theory, we want to say that you can't really it doesn't have a thickness to it. All it does is that it just, it extends forever in either direction. That's it. Right? It's a never-ending line. And then the last undefined term is a plane. And a plane looks something like this. So this is how you would see it in a book. But what you have to imagine is think of like a sheet of paper. It's something that's flat. It's a flat surface. But you have to interpret it as that it extends forever in every single direction. So in all directions, imagine it extending out forever, never ending. So when you see, if they're talking about a plane, you have to imagine it that extends forever in all directions. And just how we said that there's no size to a point, there's no thickness to a line, well, there's no thickness to a plane. So that's how we think of a plane in geometry. In theory, we want to think of it as just a flat surface, but there's really no thickness to it. Right? So just like I said, you might think of a sheet of paper that looks like a plane, but if you were to measure a sheet of paper, it actually has a little bit of thickness to it, right? Because it's a real world object. But in theory, if we're talking about a plane in theory, we think of it as something that's not really no thickness to it. It's just something that's a flat surface. And these are the three undefined terms in geometry: the point, the line, and the plane. So everything in the geometry that we're going to talk about is built upon these three terms.